Well, it's good to be back, and I want to wish every one of you a happy Christmas is already gone, and a happy New Year that's already gone as well. And I think it's a good time to speak about New Year's resolutions because it's funny how, you and I as human beings, we sort of mark our lives by times and seasons, and we have these ideas in our head about the end of the year and the beginning of the year. And I remember when I was younger, that the two hardest times in my life to get through were New Year and my birthday, because every New Year and every birthday I think, what have I accomplished and what have I done with my life? What have I accomplished and what have I done with my life? And I'd be so hard on myself and, sort of beat up on myself for, well, nowhere better than you were last year. And we get so stuck in this place of thinking that the years are what count. And, it took me a long time to realize that that is not the case. We can look at times and seasons and the days and the years and the clock and all the rest of that sort of thing, but God really doesn't, because God lives outside of time and he sees the bigger picture that you and I don't see. And it's almost like we have this magical thinking idea in our head, and I don't mean literally magical because we don't believe in magic, but it's a magical thinking idea where it's like, well, 2022 was terrible, but 2023 everything's going to change. It's like this idea that when the clock strikes midnight, suddenly everything's going to be different. And I think if you've had enough life experience, you'll realize that just isn't the case. It just isn't true. And it's just not the way that God works. It's, you can't put God into, well, all the things I was trusting for you have to be done by midnight on New Year's Eve before the clock strikes 12. And we put this pressure on God and on ourselves to get certain things done within these certain time frames. And so many times when we don't get these things done, we begin to feel like a failure. I failed. I got through 2022. I'm alive, but that's about it, And I can relate to that because, for many years you hear other people doing New Year's resolutions and you do them. It's stupid things like, I'm going to get healthier, I'm going to eat better, I'm going to read the Bible more, I'm going to fight less with my friends, my husband, my mother, my father, whatever. We make all those sort of resolutions to ourselves. And you know what? They just don't work, because so many times when we do those kind of things, we put this pressure on ourselves to make this brand new start at the beginning of the year, and everything's got to be so different. I've learned something in my life, and that when you want to change things in your life, it's better to just go one step at a time. Forget about the time, forget about the season, forget about the year and what's going on, because those are not the important things. The important thing is, am I taking a little step every single day? God doesn't work in the, well, now that it's 2023, whatever you believe in God for, it better be done by the 31st of December at midnight, otherwise. It's such a silly way of thinking. And I hope that just by me sharing with you today, that if you've ever been sort of stuck in that thinking of, what are my New Year's resolutions and I better accomplish them, that you can get to a place where you realize that that's not what's important. It's good to have goals, and it's good to want to make changes and do things differently and get better at certain areas of our life. But there's a better way to do it than just think everything's going to change at that specific time. At the, like the changing of the number, the changing of the year is just going to make everything different, and it doesn't. And I've heard so many times preachers get up and at the beginning of the year they'll say, this is going to be your year, this is going to be your season. I've heard it 1,000 times. And it's made me so angry because, over years you hear that kind of thing, and you see people coming in and out of the church. You think, well, the pastor or the minister said it was going to be their year, and it wasn't their year. And they felt like it wasn't their season. And they put this pressure on themselves, and people don't want to open up and say, well, it actually wasn't my year. And things weren't going well, and I don't feel like they're going well right now either. And it's just a false way of thinking. And I think we have to understand something. If you're going to think like that, then think like this. Every year is your year, and every season is your season. The hard truth is that some years are hard. Some years are difficult. Some seasons are tough. Some seasons are difficult. Some seasons you don't have enough money. Some seasons you're in a state of grief. Some seasons you don't have direction. But every season is your season, and that God is there with you in that season. And he wants to go through those things with you. He's never left you, and he never will leave you. And so, the next time you hear someone saying that, don't get excited and think, well, everything's going to change. And I'm not saying things can't change. Of course they can change. But just remember and remind yourself that every year is my year when I'm with God. Even if I'm going through tough things, I'm learning something. God is taking me through something, and I'm getting closer to Him because of what I'm going through. Every season is my season, because no matter how difficult that season is, God is going to get me through it. You know, me and my family have just been through some ridiculously terrible things in the last 3 months, and at some point I will talk about it, but to be very honest, it's difficult, number one, and number two, sometimes when you talk about things that people have done, they want to take legal action against you, even if you're telling the truth. And certain parts of our story, I can't really tell unless I speak to a lawyer, which is ridiculous. But we've been through some really, really difficult times, and that's why I haven't been on the channel for a couple of months now, I think 3 or more months. And you know, I got to a point where I just said to the Lord, I said, God, I've told people all my life that you're faithful, because I always said if there's one thing I know about God, God is faithful. And it was a couple of months ago, and I said to the Lord, I don't even know if I believe that anymore, because things had gone so horribly wrong for us, and so many things. And you know, people, if you're watching this now and you know us personally, you might know what I'm speaking about, or if you know our church, you may know what I'm speaking about. But if you don't, then just bear with me. Just why I'm even mentioning this is to help you understand that sometimes you can come to a crisis of faith and you don't know what to do, but God is always there. If you know, remember, I get emotional thinking about it, even now, because it's not really over. But a couple of months ago, I was sitting at about 3 o'clock in the morning, and my husband was in the study because he was praying. And I had YouTube on, and I said to the Lord, I don't even know what to. I said, I give up. And I got to the point where, and this is not, I've never been like this. I've trusted God my whole life. And I said, I don't even know what to do anymore. And I said, I've just given up. I don't even know if I have faith in you. And if I'm in that place, you know, things have gotten really bad. When I say it was a crisis of faith, it really was a crisis. And I sat there, and suddenly, up on my YouTube at 3 o'clock in the morning, a friend of Llewellyn's, Prophet Marty Layton, and he lives in America, came up on, I don't even know how I came up with it. I don't know if he was live or what it was. I don't know. But his video came up, and I just started to watch it. And to be very honest, I thought, before I even clicked on it, I thought, I don't feel like watching anything Christian or spiritual. I just had enough of everything. And anyway, I don't know why, I just clicked on the video, and he began to minister. And I'll actually leave a link to his channel in the description, so that if you want to listen to any of his stuff, he's fantastic. He really is. And he just began to speak directly to my heart. It felt like it was coming straight from God. And I believe it really was, because I was at the end of myself, and we'd just been through too much. And it was just at that point where you feel like, I cannot cope with anything that's happening to me right now. And he just began to speak, and I sat there and I sobbed and I cried. And I'm sorry if I'm getting emotional speaking about it now, but it was just like God really just came into that place where I thought I couldn't go any further. And sometimes you get to that place where you think, I can't go any further, and I don't know what I'm going to do. And God will somehow find a way to speak to you. In this case, it was YouTube, and it was somebody that we knew speaking a word of God that probably applied to many people, but I felt like it applied to me more than anyone else. And I have to be honest and say, I felt like he saved my life, not like my physical life, but my spiritual life. I felt like, I said to Llewellyn the next day, I said, he saved my life. I said, what he spoke about saved my life. I said, I was in such and I hadn't told anyone how I was feeling. And I said, it literally saved my life. If I can find the actual video, I'll post that. But in any case, everything that he does, I think is fantastic. And so that's Prophet Marty Layton. He's in Nashville in America. And wow, what a word. And you know, it made me realize it doesn't matter what you're going through, what season you're in, God is always there with you. Even when you say things to him, like I said, I don't think I have faith in you anymore. Even if you speak to God like that, you can be so honest with him, because God values your honesty. And you know, even if you're in a place where you're so broken, you'd think, well, you know, if you don't know me and my husband personally, you only sort of see me in this channel, you won't know too much about me. But you know, a lot of people, when they heard what we were going through, said, oh, you guys just get through everything. And I thought, you can say we just get through everything, but no, we don't just get through everything. Sometimes we struggle, we really battle. And people think that, you know, because you're a pastor and you've been running a church and all that kind of thing, that you've got all the answers. And you obviously don't always have all the answers. And I like to be truthful about what I've gone through, what I'm going through, what I've been through, to help other people, to help you realize that it doesn't matter. Sometimes you get these ideas from people in ministry that everything is perfect and nothing ever goes wrong in their life, and they never feel weak and they never lose faith, and it's just not the truth. And so, I just wanted to share that today. But the real thing I was speaking about, and I've gone and digressed, is that, when it comes to things like New Year's resolutions and stuff, it's not really the best way to go about making changes in your life. God's not governed by times and seasons in the way that we are. But you know what, for me, I think that's great news. Because when we think time is up, God is saying there's plenty of time. When we say, well, Lord, the rent should have been paid last week, and we don't understand what's going on, and God provides for you 2 weeks after you'd asked him to, and you don't understand why. Because God doesn't live in time and space. And sometimes we don't understand why he goes beyond our deadlines, but he didn't have that deadline. When we say time is up, God says time is nothing. Time is nothing to me. Time is just something that you and I live inside. Time is something that God made for you and me to live inside of. And we've got to stop thinking it's too late, I'm too old, it's been too long, I'm never going to get there. As long as there's life and breath in your body, God has not changed his mind about you, and he hasn't given up on you. And don't give up on yourself. If you just slip your hand into God's hand, you can do absolutely anything with him. And we might live in a physical world that's limited by time and space, but God lives in the spirit, and God is a spirit. John 4:24 tells us that God is a spirit. And so he lives outside of that. And I want to just read a couple of scriptures to you today, and I'll also put them in the description at the bottom so you can look at them again. And the first one is Psalm 90 verse 4. It says, "For 1,000 years in your sight are like yesterday when it is past, and like a watch in the night." 1,000 years is like nothing to God. And we get so worried about time all the time. I understand that we're here for a limited time. And yes, we should make the most of the time that we have. But God is not limited by that, and he knows exactly what you're going through. And if you just trust him and begin to do what he says, even if you don't understand, he will make the time for you to do what it is that you need to do and accomplish in your life. The marking of time is irrelevant to him. In 2 Peter 3 verse 8 says, "But beloved, do not forget this one thing, that with the Lord," with him. So if you don't have God, this doesn't apply. But with God, when he is your all in all, when you have a real relationship with him, with God, with the Lord, one day is as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is as a day. And so it's just another scripture showing us that time is nothing. We can't get locked up in that. It's impossible for us to truly understand time and eternity, because we aren't God, and he lives outside of time and eternity, and we live inside of time and eternity until one day we see him face to face. And we can't be foolish enough to demand that God operates on our timetable. God sees the bigger picture, and he knows everything. And don't give up when things are going bad. Sometimes when things are going bad, we just want to give up, and we just want to say, forget it, I can't do it anymore, because I've given this thing enough time, and now my time is up. Don't give up, because God is able to do anything in any space of time, in any way that he wants to, that would blow your mind. So don't give up. And then in Isaiah 57 verse 15, it says, "He is the high and lofty one who inhabits eternity." He lives in eternity. And it's in him that we live and move and have our being. And so when we are in him, we tap into that eternity. Yes, there's limits while we are in this body, but don't be so worried about the limits that you don't just trust God and just go with whatever he's speaking to your heart to do with your life. And he is the beginning and the end. He is the Alpha and the Omega. He is the author and the finisher of our faith. And even though he's all of those things, he still stands outside of the time that you and I are in. And he sees the bigger picture, and he knows how to get things done that you and I can't do. He was, he is, and he will always be. He was, he is, and he will always be God. 2 Timothy 1 verse 9, who has saved us and called us with a holy calling, not according to our works, but according to his own purpose and grace which was given to us in Christ Jesus before time began. That grace was given to you before time even began. And so you see right there that God is outside of time. And Titus 1 verse 2 says, in hope of eternal life, which God, who cannot lie, promised before time began. He made this promise before time even began, before one day of your life was even thought of or even recorded. And Ephesians 1 verse 4 says, just as he chose us in him before the foundation of the world, that we should be holy and without blame before him in love. All of these scriptures show us that God was there before time, thinking about us, making plans for us. And we get so stressed out and anxious about meeting deadlines and about making resolutions and doing things really in ways that don't always work for you and me. If you want to make changes in your life, start with one small thing. If you're saying, I want to pray more this year, I'm not saying don't do that. Absolutely do it. But don't say, I want to pray. Say now you're not praying at all. Don't say, I want to pray an hour every day. Say, I'm going to pray for 5 minutes every day. And when you get used to praying for 5 minutes every day, say, I'm going to pray for 7 minutes. And then 10 minutes. And, you know, it's not about how much time. It's about putting your heart and soul into it. So if you want to pray more, absolutely do it. But if you're not praying at all, start with 5 minutes. Don't burden yourself. And then you end up in a situation where you're thinking, well, I don't really enjoy this. I'm not enjoying this hour of praying. I don't know what to say to God. I feel like I'm getting distracted. Just give him 5 minutes. And you'll see after a week or two of doing 5 minutes every day, you'll want to do more. If you want to do, say, for example, things like exercise more, eat differently, change it slowly over time. You know, I think everybody's different. For me, that does work better. For my husband, he's like all or nothing. He says, I'm going to change how I eat today. And he does it because that's how he operates. But for me, I'm better off saying, okay, well, this week I'm going to cut out sweets and chips. And next week, I'm going to stop eating as much bread as I do. And eventually, I work my way down to eating the diet that I know I'm supposed to be eating. And so for me personally, and I think for a lot of us, it's easier to do it one small step at a time, whether it's changing the way we eat to be more healthy, or exercising more, or reading the word more, or praying more. If you're not doing it at all, 5 minutes is better than what you were doing before. So don't beat yourself up, one step at a time. It's like when captain of a ship has to change the direction of that ship. They use the rudder. The ship could be huge, but that rudder is tiny. And they just move it a tiny bit, and that whole ship turns around eventually. Not immediately, or it would fall over and sink. But that small little change in the angle of that rudder turns the whole ship around. So small changes make big differences. Don't worry about making massive resolutions, but just make small little changes. And don't call it a resolution because it puts pressure on you. Say, I'm going to change this in my life. And I'm going to start today, or I'm going to start tomorrow, or I'm going to start next week, and do it like that. And you know, I remember, just as I'm going to finish off in a minute now, but I think about the story of Lazarus. And if you read the Bible and you read that whole story and you see how Lazarus died, you would think that Jesus had lied, that time was up and Jesus had lied, because Jesus sent a message saying, this sickness shall not end in death. And you and I know, if we've read that story, that Lazarus did die. And at that point, anyone who had got that message would say, well, Jesus was wrong or Jesus lied. And so many times we're in situations like that where we've hit that deadline. Maybe it's money that's owing, or there's an accomplishment in your life as far as education or job or whatever, and you haven't reached the deadline in the time that you've either been given by someone else or you've given yourself. Think about Lazarus and just remember that. It looked like Jesus was either wrong or he was lying. But the truth of the matter was that he wasn't wrong and he wasn't lying, because although Lazarus died, Jesus came and raised him from the dead. And he showed everybody there, I'm not just a healer, but I am the resurrection and the life. I can take the things that are dead in your life and I can bring them back. And I want us just to remember that today. No matter what you're going through, that God can make the difference. No matter how far you've gone beyond the deadline that you'd set in your eyes. And so I hope this helped you today. And I will post another video again soon. If you like this one, please press the like button. And if you haven't subscribed, you can also press the subscribe button. I would really appreciate that. And thank you if you've watched this far for watching the whole video with me. I really appreciate that too. And I will see you next time.